We're here today with Rob Saik from Agri-Trend Group of Companies. Rob, we're going to talk about data, and you're a huge proponent of data. Inside the Agri-Trend Group, there actually is a company that's devoted to data.
That's right, yeah.
Why do you think data is so important?
Well, I think data is important for farming, Sean, because we need to make better decisions on the farm based on numbers, facts, trend lines. So back in 1999 or 2000, we actually placed our whole data management system on the internet. We've been operating in what they call the cloud. We've been operating in the cloud now since about 2000. So we manage all of our information live online, providing access to the farmer, but mutual access to our agronomists or agricultures and the support people, our PhDs. But everybody can tap in with permissions, because it's all encrypted. They can tap into this field and have a look and be working on the farmer's problems. And I see a lot of advantages, because we've got now some farmers where we've got 10 years of trend line data, and it's absolutely amazing what we can pick out with pHs or organic matter or trend lines in copper or some of the other nutrients that we're tracking in soils. So
is data kind of, when we look at traceability systems, we have traceability, obviously, we talk a lot about it in beef. We have in crops more and more, when you give the triffid example. Is data, in your mind, the answer to solving some of those issues?
Well, data is just one component of the system, and you brought up track and trace, and I think the overriding thing that we're hearing, Sean, the consumer really doesn't, care a lot about track and trace. What the consumer cares about is food safety. And at the end of the day, the more data that we have, the more layers that we have of data, the more trend lining that we have, the more confidence the consumer can have as to how the food was grown, and we can have a greater handle on making management changes to grow that food more efficiently. I mean, there's no farmer out there, Sean, wakes up in the morning and says, oh, I get to spray on more pesticide today. That's not the way we think. That's not the way farmers think. But we've got to make sure that we're using these resources judiciously. And this whole data system now, of course, is tying into GIS and GPS, and so the technology is just starting to stack on each other, and it all rests on the data set.
So as when I look at Canadian trade, a lot of times I think we rely on qualitative things, like the picture of the rancher, in the hills and the grass in the background, and sort of our family's been doing this for so long, and those are kind of qualitative things. This is a bit of a step in a different direction. This is more quantitative.
Yep.
Do you see that having advantages in trade?
I could tie it both ways, Sean. So we could take the data that we're used to growing our beef, for example, and track how that particular animal is grown. We could take the data and show how a potato crop was grown, or how that's a good one. Let's go with potatoes. So you show how a potato crop was grown, and on the bag that you buy in the grocery store, and I deal with a farmer right now in BC, and they package in BC fresh potatoes. So you got this tag on this BC fresh potato bag, and it's got a number, and the number actually refers back to the grower number. What if that was a QR code, and the consumer could just scan that QR code with his iPhone, for example, and go on there, and it showed a picture of the farm? And so what you're doing there, Sean, is you're doing a crossover between the qualitative stuff, which is the data management that proves how the crop was grown, but there's also that qualitative, so that was the quantitative. You could also have the qualitative side, which basically shows I'm a real grower. Here's my farm. Here's where the field of potatoes was actually grown. I think that could serve us two ways, and we're not far away. In fact, I'd like to pilot a project right away that ties some of this QR coding, barcoding, straight from some produce fields right through the agri-data solution to do both sides, qualitatively and quantitatively, profiling those growers.
We were talking off camera about a great example of how data can, solve problems.
Yep.
Talk to us about that.
Well, I mean, I'm going back, I'll come to the example, but if you think about flax and triffid, if we had a good tracking system where the farmer could prove that his flax was nowhere near that contamination, and he was able to track that, that'd be another good example. But we have a company in the States, and we've taken the Agri-Data solution down to the US, and we've been using it for quite a while now, Sean, to do tracking on potatoes. We've gone through a lengthy proof of concept with the J.R. Simplot company, company, and we're playing with the use of the data system on potatoes. So this is the story. A couple containers of French fries from a very, very well-known restaurant chain, and I won't say who they are because I don't have permission, but the restaurant chain has 2 container loads of French fries that arrive in Japan. The Japanese accuse the manufacturer of the French fries that there was too much pesticide used, particularly Temic, in the production of these potatoes. And there was no way to defend against this. So what the company did is they came back to us, and interestingly, coincidentally, we had been working on the growing of those potatoes for the last number of years, and with literally a click of a button, we were able to produce a report not only saying that we didn't use excessive amounts of Temic on the crop, but we used very, very little in the whole production of the crop, provided the report to the Japanese, and basically they had to admit that there was no issue and had to let those containers go in. So they were using it as a non-tariff trade barrier, Sean, and by having the data there, we were basically able to not only prove that the food was safe, but we were able to unlock a commercial opportunity that would otherwise have been a penalty for the company. So it was a really good success story.
Thanks a lot for joining us today.
I'm glad to be back in your show.